This is On the Sidelines with Box 13.
All right, welcome into the latest edition of the On the Sidelines podcast. I'm here, as always, with D-Jack Dante Jackson, my awesome co-host, and a special guest for today, Curtis Crabtree. Welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, amazing. There's never a shortage of things to talk about when you have you on the show. It seems like the Kraken making some, earth-shattering moves to alter the direction of their franchise. We're going to be talking about that with Curtis's expertise. The Seahawks draft coming up, first round on Thursday, just 2 days away from when we're taping this. We're going to be getting you ready. We also have a new edition of Top 5 Dead or Alive, courtesy of D-Jack. We're going to be talking. Yes, we'll save the category for later, but yes. It is draft related with the Seahawks, and then we're going to move on to some what's trending. We're going to hear from Todd Leiweke with the Kraken. John Schneider had some interesting things to say about the offensive line. It's a packed show. Let's start Kraken. That's the big ticket item right now in all of Seattle sports. They fired Dan Bylsma after just one season with the team. It's going to be a third head coach in 5 seasons. Ron Francis also getting promoted to president of operations. Curtis, what do you make of all of it?
I think when it happened, I was a little bit surprised that it happened. Then I was like, I shouldn't have been surprised. Like, in general, the NHL goes through coaches so fast. Right. Like, you just look at like when Dave Haxtell got fired a year ago, he was like the 4th longest tenured head coach in the NHL at that point, having all of 3 seasons at the helm of the team. So it's not unusual for head coaches to kind of churn and burn in the NHL. I thought Dan Bylsma would get a little bit more of a runway with the team than he has here. But also, I mean, they had the 6th worst record in the league this year. They had some 0 of 12 on back-to-backs, 23rd in power play, 21st in penalty kill, I think, or vice versa. It's one or the other. I know the numbers are right. They lost 86 games, I think it was, to injury for Jordan Eberle, Yanni Gourde, and Vince Dunn in the heart of the season when they needed to try to keep things rolling. And those are 3 pretty critical guys to lose at that stage. So, there are things in his control, and there's things that weren't in his control. He couldn't control his goaltender having an .875 save percentage, giving them one option to put in net to try to win a game. So it's a little bit of a rough shake for Dan Bylsma for sure. But it's also not completely unprecedented for the NHL to get itchy trigger fingers and decide to make more moves and switch things up.
DJ, what do you make of, this ownership group, Todd Leiweke, CEO, they are not waiting around and they're not going to be patient with a non-winner, the Kraken in this Seattle sports team. What do you make of them being a little bit more aggressive, being like, this isn't good enough, we need to make a change?
Are they a little bit more aggressive? I look at it as the same furniture, you're just rearranging the room. And as far as Ron Francis being promoted, is he still going to be involved with hockey decisions? It seems like in this market alone, you have a lot of administrative or a lot of executive people failing up. Let's call it what it is. Now, you talked about the roster and the coach. Did they set Bylsma up for failure? Did he have the roster to win? Because I think the expectations were far surpassed the realistic goals of this team. Was this a good enough team to win and place higher than they placed this year, Curtis?
I think they thought it was. And so I think that's one reason why the decisions have probably been colored the way that they have here since the season ended. But, I think they thought that there was more to give there. And, there was too many times this season where the team was sluggish out of the gates and were playing from behind frequently. Yes, they had a lot of comeback wins, but that's also mean you were down all the time. So there's absolutely warts in their game, the way that they played this season, that you can attribute to the coaching staff not being able to get the players to do what they need to do. But one difference as opposed to, say, the baseball team in the town is that the Kraken will now be paying 3 head coaches at the same time. To 2 of them to not work for them. So right. They are not afraid to spend the money to do what they think is right to try to alter the team. They maxed out their roster against the cap, last season, trying to compete as well. They're willing to do that. It doesn't mean you're going to get there. Because everything kind of has to line up. They still don't have an aircraft carrier of an offensive piece in their lineup because they haven't been bad enough to get him with the number 1 pick in the draft or had it come to them through free agency or otherwise, so they don't have that right now. They've got to do it in other ways, and when you're trying to rely on so many parts of the roster to try to boost yourself up like they did in Season 2, sometimes you might just fall short of getting enough pieces to align. I mean, think of the fourth line that they had that year. Morgan Geekie had dang near 30 goals for Boston this year. Ryan Donato had well over 20 for Chicago. That's unusual that you've got guys of that quality on a fourth line, and it worked for them in year 2. There's a reason they moved on to get bigger contracts elsewhere, because they weren't going to be able to get it in Seattle, and they have not been able to replace that depth part, and they don't have the high-end kind of offensive talent.
Have they paid the right people here? You say they was up against the cap, but I don't know of one star on this Kraken team, and I'm big on the stars, and I would say the Kraken has lost a golden opportunity to fill a void left by the Sonics from years ago, and you thought they would jump into that spot, and they failed us.
Well, it's somewhat circumstantial because of COVID. With COVID, the salary cap in the NHL did not barely increase. It was like $1 million a year for like 4 straight years in a row. Now it's going up like $6 million a year for the next little stretch. It's going to go from all of, I think, about $95 million this year to $113 million in 3 years. It's going to go up quicker. So every team in the league is kind of constrained by the contracts that they had at the time when they came in, and so there wasn't as much wiggle room there. That's why the moves to move Oliver Bjorkstrand off the roster and Brandon Tanev off the roster, guys, to create some more cap space for the future is theoretically going to give them some runway to add more back to the roster. And they did go out and make 2 big additions last offseason in bringing in Brandon Montour and Chandler Stevenson, who I think most part filled the bill of what you were trying to get out of those guys. It's just the mix of everything on the roster and the guys they lost to injury and a backup goaltender that couldn't stop a puck, kind of combined to where they just weren't competitive enough this season.
So you mentioned the roster makeup, and yeah, it's not Dan Bylsma's fault, that Philip Grubauer did not live up to expectations, was one of the worst tenders in the league. Ron Francis gets a promotion. I think a lot of fans before he was getting a promotion was, tell me why he still deserves to have his job. 1 playoff appearance in 4 years. With the expansion draft, didn't really make any aggressive moves there, any moves at all. How he gets the promotion, does that make sense to you? What do you make of Ron Francis and his relationship with Todd Leiweke, and how, nailed into this franchise he is when it feels like he hasn't really accomplished much?
I think Ron Francis has done an awful lot of stuff good that's not a part of the NHL roster right now. From building up a team coming through COVID, the organizational building blocks in place, the people in the front office, the draft picks that they've built up. They've got a large number of prospects that are starting to knock on the door of coming into the NHL that look like they're on pretty good trajectories. We'll see probably at least 3 of them next year. Yanni Newman's going to be one. Berkeley Catton's going to get a chance. There's probably going to be somebody else that pops through and gets an opportunity as well. Maybe Nike Coco at some point gets a look next season. They've got guys coming that are pretty highly regarded. And it's not like they have whiffed on every decision they've made. I think the Brandon Montour signing is going to be a very nice piece for them. I think, maybe the Chandler Stevenson deal doesn't age well, but I think he pretty much gave them what they were hoping to get out of him this year. So, I don't think that there's that many massive failings from, the roster decisions he's made. It hasn't gone as well as they've wanted at the NHL level, from a decision-making standpoint. Yeah. Andre Burakovsky was off to a great start and then got hurt and has struggled to get back to that point. It's not like I look at some contracts that they go, and say, well, that was a disaster. They haven't had those kind of moments. They haven't had an albatross on their books that they've tried to get through. So I think some of this is just the growing pains of a young franchise trying to get things going, and they're offset against a Vegas team who went through the expansion process a few years later, who have hit on just about everything that they've done. Right. So it's a contrast of, if this was the 90s and teams weren't making the playoffs for the first 15 years as an expansion team because of the way the system was set up, I don't know that we'd be feeling this visceral about it, but I think that's why Francis gets a little bit of the deference he does with the job he's had.
I would feel the same way, and the way I feel is I don't want to hear about a 5-year plan. That's my problem with almost every sports team in the Seattle market. I don't want to hear about a 5-year plan. I don't want to hear about a 10-year plan. We want to win now, and we want championships, and that's what this fan base deserves, and that's what they earn. And so with the Kraken building a farm system, they're not here at Climate Pledge. We're not seeing that. What are we going to be successful? You telling me 5 years from now? When are we going to have a winner? 3 years from now, when are these people coming up?
Yeah, well, I will say the one guy who has shown that he's not going to be patient is the guy that you want not to be patient, and that's CEO Todd Lydwicki. He was on with our Aaron Levine on Washington Sports Wrap just last week.
We do have 10 first and second round picks in the next 3 years. We have cap space.
Yeah.
And we have an owner that wants to win. And so I think you're going to see us be very, very active this offseason. And we're going to lay some of that out next week, and I hope to see you there.
So, Curtis, they have the cap space. They have the prospects coming up through the ranks. What does the direction of this Kraken franchise look like? What is their path to success and becoming, who knows how far the Stanley Cup is, but we want to make the playoffs. We saw what could happen just 2 years ago. Joey Decord gets hot. Who knows how far this team could go? What is the direction of this Kraken
and a
franchise?
winner, and let me interject real quick, a winner was promised. When the Kraken rolled out this franchise, a winner was promised. They promised a win right away, and then they pulled the rug under, and now it's a 5-year plan. It's a 10-year plan. Curtis, let me ask you, how long does a prospect generally take to come up? He's talking about first and second round picks of this year and last year. It'll take a good 3-4 years for him to come up to the bigs. What are we talking about?
It's not as long as baseball, generally, but it's definitely longer than like the NFL. You're going to have very few guys make that jump into playing their rookie season. Like that's like the top 2-3 picks maybe. And even like Matty Beniers went back to college for a year after they drafted him. That's just kind of the way it works because it's a longer runway. You're coming into a grown man league at 19. You're small. These guys can't physically handle all the sort of things at that age too because of when they're drafted at 18 years old. So it's gonna, it will take a while. We're starting to see Shane Wright develop into that spot now. Berkeley Catton, I think, is going to get a chance next year. I don't think it'll be at center. I think it'll probably start on the wing as he kind of gets his feet wet at the next level. Unless you're getting that number 1 pick, it's very tough to bank on having a guy that can make that leap. And even look at the growing pains Connor Bedard has had in Chicago. I think everybody expects him to be one of those guys. But if you're not getting that guy via your own draft and development, it's going to cost you a lot to go get them.
Get them.
And they have to want to come to your place too. So that's the one.
Okay.
And
fair.
And players typically end up being available for reasons, right? Because if they're good players, their teams are going to want to keep them. Now, let's just use Mitch Marner, who's probably going to be the biggest name free agent on the market this offseason. The only reason he would be available is if, because of their contract commitments to Austin Matthews and William Nylander, if they do a big RFA deal to keep Matthew Nyes around, if they just can't afford to keep that player with their team. Similarly in Dallas, with them adding Mikko Rantanen, with the big deal, the big trade at the deadline, does that shake a Jason Robertson free in a trade asset or something that now all of a sudden guys that shouldn't be available to you become available for reasons that make sense more than this guy's got a massive injury history or, stuff like that are the reasons those guys come onto the market. So there's going to be different ways for them to go try to chase players. Trade market, obviously. RFA market is one that I'm curious in because most general managers in the NHL have kind of stayed like a gentleman's agreement to not go there, but then St. Louis hit pretty big on 2 signings last year in Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg, to where it makes me think teams might be more willing to press that button this offseason. And then, you can take your swing at the top of the market too with a guy like Mitch Marner and see if you can get it. But otherwise, having a draft and develop strategy is very sound. And some of the teams that have been pretty bad the last few years, the Sharks, the Ducks, they're coming because they've committed to a rebuild and doing, a little bit of a process here. So exactly where the Kraken sit in this landscape, I think, is interesting to find out right now.
But you couldn't do that. You can't afford to do that if you're the Kraken. You had this city on fire when this franchise was announced. And I think a winner, building a winner right away was warranted. So I don't agree with the slow burn and the building the farm system and all that. I want to be the type of franchise you bring in the names you talked about and you win that Stanley Cup.
Sure, but you can't manifest it out of nothing. It has to fall to you to where you can get those players to come in here. And, like I said, Andre Burakovsky was off to the highest, he was leading the team in points the playoff season and gets hurt and was out the rest of the season. Hasn't recaptured that form. Brandon Montour was coming, I think he lived up to the bill with the sign. They go Absolutely. Make 2 big free agent signings that I think pretty much did what you wanted them to do. This for us, and the team as a whole wasn't good enough. They lost 3 other guys to injuries. They have a backup goaltender that didn't work. If there's any contract to criticize, it's probably the Grubauer contract, in the long scheme, in the grand scheme of things.
And he's the guy that you were riding in the playoffs. So
Yeah.
it's like you got value out of it.
Yeah. I mean, in that particular instance, he was very, very good in the playoffs. It's all of the regular season stuff that just has not been nearly good enough for what you're paying him.
Personally, do you like their plan? Do you think they've been aggressive enough to build a winner?
Yeah, I think generally, when I think of the moves that they've made, I thought most of them have been logical. Similarly with the, most of the time I can understand, like with the Seahawks, when they make decisions, why they're making those decisions.
Right.
There's been a couple of them along the way. I'm like, why? Why are you doing? It's with Percy Harvin trade, Jimmy Graham trade, and Jamal Adams trade. Those were a couple where I was like, I don't quite see it. Okay. And so, outside of, there's not been any I've really looked at with the Kraken being like, why'd you sign that guy to that contract? That doesn't make sense. I think, maybe it doesn't work out, but I think the logic behind the moves generally have been a pretty sound strategy. And so, again, when you don't have when you don't have Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, when you don't have Nathan McKinnon, when you don't have Rupe Hintz, Jason Roberts, and these big name offensive pieces that can put up a point a game or more, like, you're going to have to do it in other ways, and that can be a little bit more variable.
Well, one team that has not stood pat during the offseason has been the Seattle Kraken, signed 2 players to 7-year contracts last year. Todd Ladwicki, sort of teased it before the Bylsma and move, like, this team's going to be active in the offseason. Hopefully it's not just coaching changes and front office changes with the shakeup. I know you have to run. I want to get to the Seahawks really quick. 10 draft picks and 5 in the top 92 coming up in the NFL draft. There's been a lot. John Schneider's mentioned the Seahawks have gotten in trouble when they focus more on need than who's best available in the draft. What do you think a team's philosophy should be when it comes to drafting for need versus drafting for best available?
I mean, I think generally you take the best players you can.
Right.
Now, as John Schneider said at his press conference, like, need is factored into their grading system. Mm-hmm. So that's where the need portion comes in. When they rank stuff, it's like, we've got Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright, and, we don't need a starting linebacker. That's not, so linebackers are not going to be as high on our board. That's all kind of factored into how they bake their puzzles. So, that's how I think they tend to try to do it. Because, you end up with a Malik McDowell when you try to force things and try to go address a need that, you're chasing a guy with, some red flags, and that did not work out for them, for reasons. But, I mean, that's where some of these – that's just the most obvious one I can think of off the top of my head. But when you're trying to force things and you take, a guy who is a lesser player or one that has some big concerns about him to try to address the need that you have, that's where you can get into trouble with, overdrafting a guy, and now all of a sudden you're looking around saying we passed up on X so we could get this person, and all of that, that's where I think it tends to shake out.
Well, the biggest need by far, and I think this is consensus for the Seahawks, is the offensive line. They were not able to do anything to address it over the offseason. It remains to be seen how, is John Schneider going to reach for one in the first round? Like, what is he going to do with the draft? Here's what he had to say yesterday at the mandatory pre-draft pressers that all the teams have to do.
I think it's an area of need, yeah, absolutely. It's also a little bit of a lazy narrative because every team is looking for offensive linemen. We're trying to create guys every single year. It's an area that hasn't been developed as well as the other side of the ball.
So, D-Jack, is the offensive line being such a big need? Is that a lazy narrative, in your opinion?
You know what? I'm confused. A lazy narrative? The whole city you better pick an offensive line, John Schneider, an offensive lineman. Was it a lazy narrative when you picked Dwayne Eskridge, 5 picks before, perennial All-Pro, and Creed Humphrey, when the whole fan base was screaming for Humphrey? And he's panned out. And where's Eskridge? I don't even think he's in the league anymore. So it's a bunch of examples like that that's littered in Seahawks draft history. Now, we talk about need versus the best player available. Was Devin Witherspoon the best player available in that draft? And I love Witherspoon. don't get me wrong, great player, but he's no Jalen Carter. Let's call it what it is. That was the best player in that draft. They had a chance to get him. They had a chance to go into the trenches and take care of the trenches, like everybody says. And they picked what? Was it the best position available? Was it the best player available? Was it a need? I'm confused at their draft philosophy. Now, this is John Snyder's second draft by himself without Pete Carroll. This is an important draft for John Snyder, if you ask me. I think the seat is getting warm for him. He has to hit on not just one offensive lineman. I think he needs to hit on multiple offensive linemen for this team to be successful. Everybody knows it. Everybody wants it. I don't see what the lazy narrative is about. What's lazy about
Well,
that?
and on top of that, it's Mike McDonald's first with a full offseason, a full, being fully invested in the process to have his input, John Schneider, and get his guys. Curtis, do you think it's a lazy narrative, the offensive line?
So just as a quick aside there, the flags with Jalen Carter were Ferrari red with that guy. And I've heard stories. So we don't have time to get into them, but let me just say.
The stories are public.
Well, there's more that aren't. Okay.
We're talking about a team that drafted Frank Clark. Okay?
Yeah. He worked out pretty good, though, right?
And Jalen Carter worked out pretty good, didn't he?
Well, yeah, but the red flags between those two are, pretty significantly
in the
different.
running for that Super Bowl champion, trenches, what we needed at that time. I mean, it all lined up, and I understand the red flags, but all I'm saying is you can't. You talking out of the side of your neck. You changing. You changing the narrative every time you want to. One year you drafted for need. Next year is the best player available. He's chasing ghosts right now.
So to switch back to the offensive line topic, I think John is both right and wrong in this.
Okay.
The quality of offensive line play is not what it used to be. Right. It is harder to find, good offensive linemen compared to what the position had used to be. But it's still a game of relativity. Like, they don't need to build the greatest offensive line that's ever existed in the NFL. They need to build an offensive line that is not in the bottom 5 of the current league. It's still a game of relativity on that scale. So it's when you've looked at the way that they've played the last couple of years, there's absolutely no question the offensive line play is lacking. Now, how they go about fixing that is going to be a difference of opinion. If they feel like the coaching that they've had the last couple of years, which is, I know that's how they feel, is not good enough, and they think they can get more out of their players by being coached better with the group that they have in here now, that is one way you could see them get better, is if that comes to fruition. The other is to go get players that are better, whether it's through the draft or free agency, to make that a different, part of a different build out of the roster too. So there are different ways to improve the level of play for that group as a whole, and we'll see with the path that they're taking if they are correct in their assessment of how is the best way to get this group better. Because if, say, Tevin Jenkins goes on to a Pro Bowl season in Cleveland, is that right? I think that's where he signed.
Yeah.
You can look back and say, the Seahawks may have had concerns about, his work ethic or, different things, but,
The proof is in the pudding.
So it's all gonna. I don't have the answer for that. We're gonna find out, but I think that's where they are coming from with why they have approached the offensive line the way they have this offseason, and if they're going to add to it in the draft or not, I certainly would not be surprised to see him do so.
There are spots to fill. There are spots to fill in that offensive line, and you got all the draft capital from this big pivot over the offseason. It's going to be really interesting to see how they use it. Really quick, Curtis, outside of offensive line, what are the Seahawks' biggest needs as they go into the draft?
Even though they signed one in free agency and Eric Saubert, I think they could use some tight end depth. Mm-hmm. Noah Fant's just on the last year of his contract, and then the position will turn over a little bit. So playing for the future there a little bit. Secondary depth never hurts. I don't. In defensive linemen, particularly edge rushers, you can never have too many of those. Right. So those are some areas. I don't think the safety one's like a massive concern. It's just as I was going through the roster, thinking about it in my head. Anything on the line of scrimmage helps, for sure. Tight end would be included in that. Because of the strength of the running back class, I will tell you right now, don't be surprised to see them take a running back.
How early?
I don't know how early, because I think you can get a guy who might be a second-round talent in other drafts, maybe in the 4th round this year, because the class is deep enough.
Right.
But that's kind of the general way I would think about going into this. I think they're mostly fine at corner. I think, maybe you could add some depth to the receiver group just because you've turned that over so much. But I think their top 3 guys are NFL starting caliber trio. Definitely not as good as they've had in the past few years, but guys that have done enough in the league to obviously be pretty proven. That's kind of, I think, the general read I have on the roster right now.
Now, you just named almost every position and said basically they just need to bolster those positions with maybe backups or reserve players. So offensive line is a glaring need. It goes without saying. So they need starters at that position. I don't understand how it can be a reach to go get exactly what you need. And as far as the injured players, the free agents, I agree with the Seahawks. That would be a reach. That's what I would call a reach. Is reaching for a player that's hurt or has an injury history and not bringing them in. But then you go against your own philosophy and you bring in a DeMarcus Lawrence and you bring in a Cooper Kupp. And that's what I mean by, as far as they talking out of the side of their neck with their philosophy, what is it, Because you don't want to freeze without a physical. You go get a Lawrence and a Kupp with injury history. So I'm confused at the direction that the Seahawks are going and some of the choices that they make. But if they don't get an offensive lineman this year in this draft, heads will turn.
Well, I think they're going to get an offensive lineman in the draft, but
early. Let's put it that way. Early.
Just let's
18.
Just to talk out the scenario, right? You want to take them at 18, right? Let's say the best offensive lineman in the draft is a 5th-round talent. Just for the sake of argument, do you take him at 18 anyway, just to go get your guy?
Yes, I think you go get.
See,
your
I think
guy.
that's
I think
not
you
very
go
smart.
Get your guy, definitely. And it's something to be said about the public too. I mean, the fan base is rabid right now.
But what happens when that 5th-round talent flames out,
Yeah.
and you're like, John Schneider missed on an offensive lineman again?
You know what? I can take that loss. I can take that hit because he actually tried. He went out.
It's not like John Schneider hasn't tried in the draft to get offensive linemen.
They've drafted more offensive line capital than any other team in the NFL.
Right, and that begs the question: do we trust him to make this pick? Who is this team that he has around him? I talked about it before. This is the 2nd draft without Pete Carroll, and he was a part of that. But, I mean, they haven't been successful picking this position. Do we trust him to make this pick?
That is a fair argument to make when it comes to offensive linemen, given their track record. I think that's a fair argument to make. I don't think you push the guy up the board to 18 just because you need an offensive lineman if he ain't worth the pick.
I think you got to be smart. I think you got to look at all. You got to have a very holistic approach. The general manager's job isn't just to draft for this season or just draft for one position. He's got to look at everything. So I think you got to take everything into account. Yes. Curtis, I know you need to run. So thank you so much for hopping on. Read his work on fox13seattle.com on our incredible sports section. He does an awesome job with the digital content. He'll have stuff out today on Ron Francis being promoted. So, and a lot of stuff on the Kraken, Seahawks stuff to come. So thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, busy week. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
No problem, guys.
All right, DJ, let's talk Mariners really quick. Yeah. What a week it has been. I mean, they take 2 of 3 in Cincinnati with some big comeback wins there. They take 2 of 3 in Toronto as well. Cal Raleigh and Rowdy Tellez just going off. Rowdy with the home run in all 3 games in the series.
Yes.
I mean, look at him. And then he had the grand slam and the extra innings win on Saturday. Cal Raleigh continues his hot streak with the torpedo bat. He's going crazy. I think he's tied for the lead in the league in home runs so far this year. Absolutely incredible. What stood out to you?
I must mea culpa. I wasn't a big Cal Raleigh fan. I will be honest with you. Now, I recognize his greatness. I've always thought he was a good player, but I thought he struck out too much. I thought his batting average was a little bit too low. And, say, what's all the fuss about Cal Raleigh? Now I see. Yep. I'm a convert. Ethan sold me. I'll tell
it's
you
all
guys.
me. I got you, Mariners Nation.
Yeah,
we got D-Jack on the bandwagon.
This Cal Raleigh, this guy right here is turning into a superstar right before our very own eyes. And I love it. These are the kind of players that I've gotten on this podcast and said that we wanted. We needed. I thought Cal Raleigh had a week in. And then you talk about Rowdy Tellez. I also talked about him because I wanted to bring a youngster up in this place.
Yeah.
But if you keep hitting it like that, Rowdy Tellez, Go ahead, you can stay up. You can grab your sideline pass and go ahead and stay up, right? We're
Well,
not going to
absolutely.
replace you just yet.
And you talk about the young guys. I mean, Ben Williamson has come up. He's only 5 for 23, but he hit his first home run. That's what tied the game on what was it, Saturday? That
He's
sent
made
to
an
extras.
impact.
So yeah, he's made an impact. His defense at third has been so refreshing. I will
Yes.
say, and we knew that was going to happen, but you also see some contributions with the bat. It doesn't look like he's been overpowered. He's only struck out 6 times in the 6 games that he's played. So I don't think that's too bad. So he's getting it done over at the
So
hot
how
corner.
many series? Is that 4 series in a row?
4 series in a row
4
for
series
your
in a
Seattle
row that the
Mariners.
Mariners win. And that is without their superstar, Julio Rodriguez, producing like he's supposed to be. And that's I'm alarmed by this right now with Julio Rodriguez. I understand the Mariners are winning, so I'm not going to jump off the ledge. A great job, Mariners, but we have to get Julio started. We have to get him going. He has to be that star that he was meant to be. So I'm waiting for Julio, and then I think this team, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about his Aprils. It has not been very good, and
Right.
the lineup just dropped right now. He's leading off. I didn't see. I was like, is Julio getting another day off? No, he's leading off. So Dan Wilson is sticking with his young star.
You have to.
Yeah, you
have to.
got to let him just figure it out. So he's batting $188 with 25 strikeouts so far and 85 at bats. It's not great. But he's always started slow. So
Right.
it just might
But
be might be something. He's streaky. So it just might be something. You just got to hope that he has serviceable production, which he's shown flashes. So it's not like he's just a black hole in that lineup.
No.
He's still slugging it well. He's got 3 home runs on the year so far. So
And he has a glove out
he's
in
not.
center
Yeah,
field.
he's got a glove. He's not unplayable. But yeah, you want more from your superstar. But the fact that they've been able to win 4 straight series without his production, that says a lot about the supporting cast and what this offense has done
Yes.
without really a stellar pitching staff behind him.
Yes, and the pitching staff has just been like on a normal pace, like
Mm-hmm.
a normal for a major league roster, but they haven't been their lights out self. So once you get the pitching going with the hitting, and this is what I talked about in one of the previous episodes, why can't the Mariners get all things running at once? Why clicking on all cylinders, as they say? That's the team that we want, but they're winning, so I'm not going to complain.
Part of it's
I'll take
baseball.
it. I'll take it.
Part of it's that's just the nature of
Yes,
baseball.
yes, I understand.
I mean, and the goal is to be able to get to October and then have everybody firing on all cylinders
Yes.
come October time. So you just got to get it. You just got to get there.
I wanted to talk about the focus, though, of Julio Rodriguez now. And they told us over the offseason he was doing things differently to get off to a better start. That was kind of a focus with the team,
Yeah.
and he's disappointed so far.
Yeah.
As far as the hot start. I don't want to keep giving this guy excuses. At some point, you are who you are. And I would say the last 2 to 3 years, he's had big moments. He's been an above-average player, but he hasn't realized that potential from that first year that we thought we had the next, if I know it's not fair, the next Ken Griffey Jr.
Yeah.
or the next A-Rod. We thought we had that in Julio Rodriguez. I don't think he's that type of player.
Well, we were just talking about Cal Raleigh. Talk about the progression between. He's gotten better every single
Yes.
year, and it's just a month, so I don't want to put too much into his start, but
Yes.
it looks like he's taken another leap offensively. Julio Rodriguez just hasn't done that, so it's been a little bit disappointing. But it's not like we don't have one of the young budding superstars on our team in his early 20s on a very team-friendly contract. So
Yes. Now I ain't saying get rid of the guy.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I ain't saying that at all. I'm just saying, hey, Julio, get hot, man. That's all.
It definitely something that we want to see. But without Julio Rodriguez's production, the team is 15th in runs scored over the entire season, not just the last 2 weeks. So they're right in the middle of the road with runs scored, which is what you need from this offense to be able to supplement this pitching staff and get to October. So that's a good thing to see. You go into the analytics, WRC plus, they are 6th at a 115. That's 15% above league average offensively. Wins above replacement. They are 12th, so top half of the league there. They're doing a lot of things right. And
Yes.
the biggest part about winning that Cincinnati series where you sort of had to come from behind, but they got it done. They got it done in the late innings, which has become a theme for this team. Late in games, they have shown an ability to put together at-bats, string together hits, hit the timely long ball, and come back from these deficits and bail out the pitching staff. That is something, if you're going to play in these one-run games, and I think the pitching staff is going to find its form at some point. You get George Kirby back. You get Luis Castillo back to the pitcher he's been the last couple of years. This starting pitching staff is going to be fine. You get Matt Brash back to shore up that bullpen. I'm not super worried about the starting rotation and the bullpen, but if you have the timely hitting, when you're in a 3-2 ball game, late in the game, you need a hit here or there. Those are the things that I'm excited about seeing. That you can only take so much out of a 1 month sample size as far as what players are going to be, but you can take, hey, what is this team made of? And what they're made of right now, what they're showing is that they'll fight in the later innings.
Yes, and I'm excited about this team, but I'm also a little nervous, because we're counting on Jorge Polanco, who's the best hitter on the team right now this year. A Rowdy Tellez. We're counting on some of these players. And
Dylan Moore.
And Cal even, to a point, because catching all year, handling that staff, catchers cannot usually stay healthy all year, and knock on wood. I'm not, wishing any injuries on Cal, but we know that's a tough position. Right now, it's early in the season. He's feeling good. He hasn't had the workload. Let's see what he looks like in, July, August, the dog days of summer when he's catching 4 games straight or whatever he does, and hopefully he can keep on with this streak. But right now, Cal is the bona fide superstar on this team right now. We thought it would be Julio. We misidentified. It's Cal Raleigh, and he has arrived.
Yeah, you're right. And it is fragile. Cal goes down, Jorge goes down. It's going to be tough. And, Cal plays a position where injuries happen a lot. And Jorge Polanco is injury prone. He's been DHing because of this new injury to his side, aside from his surgery on his knee over the offseason.
Yep.
So, it is very fragile.
Sore hip.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, rib cage or
but
whatever.
He's still hitting though.
He's still hitting. He's still hitting from that left side.
Yeah,
taking that series against Cincinnati and then coming back and taking the series in Toronto, ginormous. We were talking about this East Coast road trip, 3 series on the East Coast. That is tough to come out of that above 500. They take 1 game. The next 3 in Boston, they come back at worst 5-4.
Right.
So you just don't get swept by the Boston Red Sox, and you have a winning East Coast road trip. That's incredible.
I'm expecting them to win. I'm expecting them to win this series.
They've given themselves margin for error. Ever heard of that, Jerry Dipoto? That's crazy. Isn't that wild?
We don't want the margin for error. We want you to win. Come home winning all 3 of these series. Get greedy. And that's what I think this team needs to do is get greedy. Don't be satisfied with a 500 road trip. Go ahead and win this series, and I think they can do it. If the pitching wakes up and those bats keep going like they are, I think the Mariners can win this series against the Red Sox.
They absolutely can. I will say it has been a long time since the Mariners have won a series at Fenway Park.
Right.
There's a reason for that.
It's time.
It's one of the tougher places to play, especially with the Mariners traveling all that way. You're on the back end of a East Coast road trip. They haven't been home in over a week. Me personally, I'm going to temper my expectations.
Okay.
If they can get 1 game from this 3 against the Red Sox, I will be happy. No reason they can't win the series, though. But I will be happy if they can take 1 game, finish this road trip above 500.
Yes,
that's how I feel.
Go Mariners, like I said. And I said, get greedy, right?
Absolutely.
I talked about getting greedy. Don't be satisfied. And I just wanted to transition to the Sounders this weekend.
Yeah.
3-0 in the first half. And, and I love seeing the goals being put in the back of the net. That's what I've been crying for all season.
They dominated that game.
They look so great.
Yeah.
But it was 3-0 at the half, and that's the way it ended. I wanted them to get greedy. I wanted them to go ahead and tack on 3 more on their head.
Yeah, sure.
I want
They have chances. The
Sounders have a chance to put fear in this league. They have the pieces in place. They have the stars. They have the goal scorers. They have the defenders. This is a well put together team. They just have to perform. Now, you went 3-0 in the first half. Love seeing it. Great. All right. I want 6 now. I want you to go get 3 in that first half and not play it safe. I want you to put the league on notice. We are the Sounders, and we are here.
I will say they didn't play it safe. They could have waited another week to have Jordan Morris come on. They could have waited another week to debut Ryan Kent and let him get another week of fitness under his belt. They could have, waited another week to not have Alex Roldan come back from injury. He's more of an attacking-minded, right back there.
Yes.
So, they gave all of their ammunition. Maybe they weren't as aggressive in going forward.
Right.
'Cause, what I was really happy to see is that they kept the clean sheet in a blowout.
Yes.
That was the one. They didn't have any, shooting themselves in the foot late in the game, losing their focus for an instant, and then Nashville gets a garbage time goal. They have some life, whatever. They kept the shutout. That's what I was looking for in that second half. And I totally understand what you're saying.
Yes.
They had chances going
Tack
forward,
on.
and they had attacking-minded subs as well. I wouldn't say you wanted to get those guys minutes to get them in some game action.
No,
and
I
everything,
like
but-
the flow of the game. I like the substitutions. I like everything they did. All I'm saying is a mindset.
Yeah.
I just want the mindset where we are attacking all the time.
Absolutely.
Regardless of the score. When I coach a team, I tell a team, don't ever look at the score. We're going to do what we do. And that's what I want to see the Sounders do. It was great this weekend seeing them put that goals, and I like where we got the goals from. And like De La Vega got his
That was a
goal.
rocket.
I mean,
That was fun.
the guy showed like he's one of the best in the league, definitely off of that one hit. You saw the pedigree in De La Vega. So if he can stay healthy and he can get his feet under him, and you bring Morris back and you add a Ryan Kent, I see this team as a potential championship squad. Definitely. So I'm just thirsty right now, Ethan. I'm thirsty for a champion. Come on, Seattle, give me a champion.
Well, see, you talk about mindset, and it was just 2 weeks ago when they lost 3-0 at San Diego.
Yes.
And that Paul Rothrock said this needs to be rock bottom, and it was. They respond. They go to FC Dallas where they hadn't won in a few years, and they get a win on the road, off the back of that 3-0 win or loss to San Diego. It was the third game in a 3-game road trip. Then you follow that up, you come back home, hey, we're on our home turf, we're going to take it to you. They do just that. They scored 3 in the first half for the first time in just under a full year. First time in a league game that they've done that in the first half.
And first time under 35 minutes in like 4 years.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, they made history this weekend, and I want to see more of it. More of it. And you talk about Rothrock, and I'm going to toot my own horn. I told you, like, hey, that's my
Yeah.
X factor right there.
Yeah.
He's been playing great. There's no denying that. I wasn't expecting to see that out of him this year. I didn't know. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know your game. All right? I wasn't familiar with your game is what they say. I'm sorry, but he's shown that he is a great player in his own right, and he's been great on the side over there for the Sounders. Now it's time to get greedy, Sounders. Get greedy.
Absolutely. So up next they go on the road again. They got to play Colorado. So
And let me shout out Stephen Fry also.
Oh, man, yeah,
I
he's
think
been
it was
awesome.
2 or 3 straight clean sheets.
Yep.
I believe. He's been great in the net also. I had called him out in one of the earlier episodes. I said, what's going on? He's moving kind of slow. He's looking back to form right now. Shouts out to Stephen Fry, man.
And he had 2 big saves in that first half to keep the clean sheet.
Great.
The
Great
Sounders
saves,
sort of let
yes.
some guys in behind in an otherwise dominant half. So Sounders are looking up. That's amazing. I'm sorry, I said we were going to do top 5 dead or alive right after Seahawks with Curtis.
Yeah,
but we sort of got sidetracked. But top 5 dead or alive. What do you got for us this week, DJ?
Oh, man, I got the top 5 dead or alive Seahawks players that went undrafted.
All
Now,
right.
we're talking about the Seahawks draft this coming Thursday,
Yep.
and we know, like, they have the 18th pick, they have 10 picks, but the Seahawks actually have a reputation that is known for their undrafted free agents right after the draft. They've got quite a few great players coming out of that draft. So I'm going to start, and I have a list right here just so I won't forget. I'm sorry, you guys. All right, bear with me. I'm going to start with my honorable mention, all right? We have John Kitna. In 1996, he was an undrafted free agent signed to the Seahawks. Joe Nash, a defensive lineman, linebacker, played 182 consecutive games. He was like the Iron Man back in the day. So I had to take it all the way back. All right, but now it's time, you guys. It's the time you all been waiting for, Ethan. I hope you got it.
I've been looking forward to this.
It's time for the top 5 dead or alive Best undrafted Seahawks players. We're going to start with 5. Michael Bennett. 2009, he was undrafted. He signed with the Seahawks. He didn't play that year for the Seahawks. He went to Tampa Bay. He came back a few years later. Now, everybody remember when Michael Bennett, after the 2015 NFC Championship game, he borrowed a bike and did a victory lap around the clink. So Michael Bennett is my number 5. All right. So we're gonna go with 4. Now, I went back to Kingdom days right here. Norm Johnson, Now, a lot of people think like a kicker. What's a kicker supposedly have on this list? Well, he's arguably the best kicker in Seahawks franchise history. And if you looked at the books, the record books, I'm sure he's up there as far as scoring. Because kickers usually lead a franchise in scoring. Right. People don't know that. All right, he was known as Mr. Automatic. You have to be on this list. You have to be top 5 dead or alive.
With a nickname like that?
Mr. Automatic, Norm Johnson is my 4th one. All right, 3, and you guys going to love this. Mac Strong.
Yeah.
Mac, I mean, can a name be any more apropos? Mac Strong, I mean, this guy, it was a bruising blocker. He was signed with the Hawks in 1993. He played 15 years for the Seahawks. I mean, he was basically Mr. Seahawks.
Legend, yeah.
He made the Pro Bowl twice, and he was just a critical part of the Seahawks ground attack.
Sean Alexander's lead blocker in 2005.
And sadly enough, his career was cut short by a herniated disc in his neck. Mac Strong is 3 on my list. Top 5 dead or alive, undrafted Seahawks. All right, we're going to go to 2, and it's Angry Doug. Angry Doug Baldwin in 2011. He had a great start to his career. He led the team in receptions and receiving yards. The first time a rookie ever did that in the Super Bowl era. We know the moments he had when he caught the pass on the top of his head. Doug Baldwin was a great Seahawk. I expect to actually see him in the Ring of Honor at some time real soon.
I hope
Seahawks.
so.
All right.
I hope so.
And then we go, all right, drum roll. Here we go. All right, here we go. Number 1, Dave Craig. All right. Now, I had to take it back. It's probably before your time.
It is before my time.
Dave Craig is one of the best quarterbacks in Seahawk history. 1980, he was undrafted. He was a 7th-string quarterback.
Wow.
When he joined the team.
Wow.
He worked his way up and eventually replaced Jim Zorn. And, I mean, he still holds team record. He did hold team records in most career touchdown passes with 195. Single season record for touchdown passes in 32 in 1984. Most games with 4 or more touchdown passes at 7. Dave Craig, the number 1, top 5, dead or alive, undrafted Seahawks. Let's go. What do you think about the list?
The only thing I think Doug Baldwin should be number 1.
Okay.
Super Bowl, bringing the first Super Bowl to the Seahawks. They don't win that Super Bowl without Doug Baldwin's contributions on 3rd down. Because that team was built on its defense, and it was keep the game close, let Russell Wilson and Doug Baldwin take over late in the game and come back and win these games.
I agree.
I think Doug Baldwin should be number 1 just because of his Super Bowl contributions. But I love the list. No notes. A lot of these players I didn't even know.
Yeah, now we know they were called pedestrian. Him and Jermaine Kearse, who was also should have been an honorable mention.
Who said that?
He was undrafted also.
Who said that?
I believe it was Chris Carter of the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Called them pedestrian.
Jermaine Kearse, I throw him on the honorable mentions.
He's on the list also. Now,
UW legend
I
as well.
agree. I had Doug Baldwin number 1, but the quarterback is the most important position in sports.
Yeah,
and Dave Craig, just when I started looking him up, he just had too many Seahawk records to not be number 1 undrafted. But Doug Baldwin, hey, we might have a 1 and a 1A like we did last week situation. But Dave Craig is the number 1, top 5, dead or alive, undrafted Seahawks. That's my list, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, and I love the story behind he signs with the team as the 7th-string quarterback.
Yes, worked his way up.
And then ends up taking over for the great Jim Zorn.
Yes.
That's incredible. So very deserving number 1. I will say. Let's move on. Let's wrap up the show really quick. What's trending? Let's go around the nation.
All right, here we go. What's trending? Duke's superstar freshman Cooper Flagg has officially declared for the NBA draft. Now, he's the presumptive number 1 pick.
He will be. He
was at what? The Naismith. He won.
Won the award. He won everything.
Right, and I watched Duke play this year. He was the best player in the nation. He will be number 1 overall. He will change whatever team's fortunes he happens to go to. Cooper Flagg has officially declared NBA. Here he comes.
You want really quick. You know what's crazy? I saw somebody doing a simulate the draft lottery type thing, just like on some website. Like 10 out of the 12 refreshes he hit, the Dallas Mavericks got the number 1 overall pick. They got the 10th best odds on this random draft lottery.
It happens. I mean, Orlando.
That would be. I'm not big into conspiracies, but if the Mavs trade away Luka Doncic for nothing, they could have gotten 10 first-round picks for Luka Doncic. Instead, they get a always injured Anthony Davis.
Yes.
And a first-round pick or something like that. They got nothing for him.
Max Christie and maybe a pick.
Yeah, they get that. And then the NBA gives them the first overall pick and Cooper Flagg.
Yes.
I would be disgusted.
The conspiracy theorist is going crazy right now.
Anyway, but I saw that on social media. Somebody was just like refreshing the draft lottery. The Dallas Mavericks, they have the 10th best odds. And almost every single one of these simulations, they were getting the first overall pick. So my radar is going off.
So he can go anywhere but Dallas.
Anywhere but Dallas.
Okay.
Oh my God! And I feel really bad for those fans. But Nico Harrison, and I'll talk.
Yeah. No. Go ahead. Go for it.
No. I want you to finish your headlines. But after you finish that, he should be rewarded absolutely nothing for trading Luka Doncic.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yes. I'm gonna go ahead and continue on what's trending on May 16th. Hopkins, Minnesota, is renaming itself Paige Bueckers, Minnesota, in honor of the WNBA's number 1 pick, pro debut with the Dallas Wings, Paige Bueckers. I mean, what more can you say? She's a legend at UConn.
Yeah.
She just brought the championship. She's been a great player her whole career. Now her hometown is naming the town or changing the name of the town after her.
That's pretty cool.
You ever had that happen?
No,
I can't find
I can't
find Ethanville nowhere.
McReynolds Town, that's not. Not yet. Maybe that's pretty damn cool. I can't think of a higher honor, to be honest.
Yes. Now I want to go ahead and follow up with that.
Yeah.
And we're gonna have to come up with a gentleman's bet right now.
Okay.
Who will have the better rookie season?
Ooh.
Paige Bueckers or Cooper Flagg?
Oh, that's hard. I mean, so Alyssa, when she came on, mentioned the dysfunction with the Dallas Wings organization.
Right.
And she's told me about it. And there's a reason why there was rumblings that Paige would force her way out of Dallas to go to Seattle. Aside from her connections to Seattle, it was more so about the dysfunctions in Dallas. Wherever Cooper Flagg goes, I don't think it'll be as dysfunctional of a organization.
The Wizards has the best chance. You want to rethink
that? Point. I mean,
you want to rethink that statement?
Well, so okay, let me throw in the injury history that you talked about when we were talking about the WNBA draft with Paige. I think Cooper Flagg has a better rookie year, in my opinion.
All right, we are in agreement, but I will take Paige just to make sure we go. All right, you have Cooper.
I got Cooper.
I have Paige.
I got Cooper.
Let's move on. Deion Sanders, he's catching flack for retiring his son, Shedeur Sanders, and defensive back Travis Hunter.
Yeah,
he retired their jerseys this past week. He's receiving a lot of flack, especially from some of the alumni, the former football players. Now, some think that Shedeur is not worthy.
Yeah, absolutely
and
not.
Travis Hunter is too early.
Yeah.
So, too soon. So, what do you think about that?
I saw in your thing he went 13-12 as a starter.
He went 13-12. Yes, that's the record.
Let's just what is the participation medal turning into a wall of honor spot? I mean, are you kidding me? And 1 year removed from, they didn't even go to the playoff. I mean, what is the standard for retiring a number anymore? I mean, it's ridiculous. And Deion Sanders, I was listening to sports radio. He said this is only a conversation because his last name is Sanders, insinuating that nobody would have a problem with it, except for he is a Sanders. The only reason he's getting his number retired is because he is a Sanders. So that's the whole point, Deion. You're retiring his number because he's your son. That's okay, fine, whatever. Don't act like that's not the reason. So I don't think it's warranted at all. Travis Hunter, maybe, he's doing stuff that hasn't been done in a football field before, but the year after, he hasn't even been drafted yet. Like, you gotta wait a little bit to have these honors. That's my opinion.
Travis Hunter, definitely Heisman Trophy Award winner.
Yeah.
He definitely deserves it. Now, whether it's 5 years, 10 years from now, or 5 minutes from now, I have no problem with that. Shedeur Sanders, I also have, believe it or not, I have no problem with that.
Really?
Either. Now, the athletic director came out and said, these two kids have changed the trajectory of this program that was irrelevant.
Sure.
So, I think, as far as the jersey being retired, I think it's more about them making them relevant than what they did on the actual football field. And now we're talking about Colorado football. So, and these alumni have come out and spoke, but guess what? You didn't say nothing in 2021 when they were 1-11, 1-14, and then they were 4-8 in the Pac-12. So you didn't say anything then. We heard it was crickets. Why? Because you didn't matter. You didn't matter, Colorado. Deion has made you matter. He has made you relevant. And whatever he wants to do with that program, guess what? He has the autonomy to do it, and he's earned that right because he's made you relevant. He's made it must-see TV. I've watched every Colorado game last year because of it. And Shedeur Sanders is a great quarterback, regardless of the record. He definitely deserves to have his number up in the rafters.
Who made them matter, though? You just said it.
Deion
Deion Sanders, not Shedeur Sanders.
But Shedeur was
running, a part of it.
He was steering the ship. Now the coach, we know in college football, the coach is the star. But let's not act like he wasn't Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. Let's not act like he didn't win the Johnny Unitas Award for the best quarterback in the nation this year. This guy has all the accolades that you can have as a quarterback.
13-12.
And his receiver
didn't sniff the playoffs.
And his receiver won the Heisman. Who you think was throwing in the ball?
He didn't win the Heisman just because of his play at receiver.
I understand that. You're talking about a special player, but he had a hand in that, and he helped Travis get that Heisman by being his quarterback.
I think Deion Sanders deserves all the praise that is coming his way. But just because Deion Sanders did a great job in changing the trajectory, and his son is a big part of that, that doesn't mean that his son's jersey should get retired. Deion, when it's all said and done, there should be a statue in front of on Colorado's campus.
Tomorrow.
2 years? 2 years?
Yes.
They could flame out the next 3 years and what's Deion gonna do without Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders? Remains to be seen. I'm not saying he's going to fail, but he could. You gotta wait for these things to play out and not let the recency bias take over.
I like how Deion is changing the game. He said he's not waiting, and he's doing things his way.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you right now, and I know I didn't have a Dante's Inferno, but I'm going to tell the Colorado alumni and their former players right now, nobody was checking for you. Mm-hmm. Nobody was worried about you. You have 6 players now with their jersey retired. So before Travis and Shedeur, that was 4. That's sorry. Come on, Colorado. You could do better. Leave Deion alone before he leave. Now, if he leave, then what you going to do? So just be quiet.
Yeah, that's fair. We'll agree to disagree there. I see both sides. I just think it's a little bit of a reach to retire Shedeur's number. Travis won the Heisman. Deion's going to get all the praise.
It's different.
And then Deion acting like it's not because it's just his son that he's getting his jersey retired. I think that's ridiculous.
His son did do that though. Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year.
Fair.
Davey O'Brien.
He was fine.
He has all the accolades. He was the best quarterback in the nation.
I think it was Cam Ward. He didn't get the award, but whatever. Was that all the what's trending topics that you had?
That's it. I'm sorry.
I wanted to bring up Nico Harrison with the Dallas Mavericks.
All right.
Oh my God, he makes Jerry DiPoto look like executive of the year. I mean, that Luka Doncic trade is a moment in time where I will, that's like you remember where you were when it happened.
It was a big deal.
I was at my first Portland Trailblazers game ever in the Moda Center, and it was awesome. We were sitting there in the third quarter, and I get the Shams notification.
Mm-hmm.
There is no way this real Shams just got hacked. They traded Luka Doncic.
Yes.
They went to the finals with him last year. He's 25. They had a guaranteed 10-year window of having a shot at winning a championship. You trade that away because you think he's fat? You think he's injury prone?
Yes.
And then you trade for Anthony Davis, the most injury prone player in all of the NBA right now?
And I like Anthony Davis.
I do too, but
they call him street clothes for a reason. I mean, the guy stays hurt, and I'm gonna say it again. Like I said it in every episode, you can't help the club in the tub.
Mm-hmm.
This is malpractice by Nico. Let's call it what it is. You traded, a superstar, top 3 player in the league. That led
for the next 10 years.
That led your team to the finals last season. Not 10 years ago, not 5 years ago, last season. Led this league in scoring. One of the top players, and you just give him away for a bag of chips.
It makes no sense. So Nico is talking a lot. A lot of report. First of all, he had a presser with only selected Dallas Mavericks media members that were invited.
Yes, that's what they do.
Already, if you need to handpick the people in the room to ask you questions, there's something not right.
Yes.
The latest thing that he said that's trending right now is he didn't know the extent. He knew that Luka Doncic was important to the Maverick fan base, but he didn't realize how important he was. Now, I mean, just talk about not reading the room.
And you're talking about a guy who's been the GM the last 4 or 5 years. So this is not like you just came last year. You didn't know the culture. You didn't know the player. You've actually grown with Luka. You should have known this. And a lot of people are pointing now at that's why you only got an Anthony Davis, a Max Christie, and a lower draft pick for Luka. You didn't get enough because you didn't know the value of Luka. So that's malpractice. You didn't do your job. You didn't know the value of a player that you was trading, and one of the best in the NBA, and you end up getting not enough for him by all experts' account. It's not my opinion.
They could have gotten 10 first-round picks, and it still wouldn't have been enough for Luka Doncic on top of Anthony Davis. And so that's the other facet of this is they only talked to the Lakers because they didn't want it to get out. Why didn't you want it to get out? Because you didn't want to upset the fan base? Because Luka Doncic means so much to the fan base that you say you don't even realize that he means that much? I mean, it makes zero sense. All of this stuff, to tie it back to Seattle sports, it reminds me of Jerry DiProto and the 54% press conference.
Yes.
And I don't know if this is going to be a hot take or not, but I'm not trying to make light of how awful Jerry DiProto's comments were after missing the playoffs, and we only want to win 54% of the games. What Nico Harrison is doing in Dallas is worse. I'm not going to say miles worse because what Jerry DiProto did with those comments and how tone deaf they were it was awful, and the fan base has every right to be upset as they are.
I agree.
But what Nico Harrison is doing, I think trumps that. I imagine if the Mariners traded Julio Rodriguez to the Yankees. Just for like 2 seconds, and they got back a top 15 prospect and a fourth outfielder.
Yes,
I mean that is the equivalent of this trade. And say what you want about Jerry DiProto.
Not even because Julio is not the caliber of player that Luka is. You're talking about a top 3 player in the league right now. He's led the league in scoring. Yes. He's coming off a finals appearance.
So, at 25.
25 years old.
It makes no sense.
So you can't compare him and Julio. It's levels to this.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point.
No shade to Julio.
It's a good
point.
But
I understand your point in saying, basically, what are you doing? And 54%, sometimes it's better to just stay quiet, not say nothing. And now you understand why some of these executives, these GMs, these coaches, they'd rather not talk to the press because they open their mouth and they blab out something like this. You didn't know how valuable Luka was to Dallas, but you traded him anyway?
Oh, my God.
It speaks volumes. Nico, I pray for you, man.
Nico, I'm not praying for Nico.
Hey, I don't like to see nobody lose their job, but it looks like it's going in that direction.
I mean, for what he's done to the Dallas Mavericks fans,
Is it just him?
he's done it to himself. He's trying to make it just him. I don't know if you saw the ESPN article that just came out, but he's forcing people out that are questioning his authority and stuff like that. I mean, he is on a power trip my way or the highway, hiring yes men. He's completely destroyed the culture of Dallas Mavericks basketball. And that was a very well-run organization under Mark Cuban. And he has single-handedly, it seems like, uprooted all of that for his own ego. I don't know. Anyway.
And with that being said, let me end it with this.
Yeah.
Bring back our Sonics.
Yes. Yes. So we can
Right
so we
now.
can smoke the Mavericks and the Thunder anytime they come to town at Climate Pledge Arena. That's what's trending. That's going to do it. Thanks as always to Curtis Crabtree for coming on last minute. For D-Jack, I'm Ethan McReynolds. We'll see you next time on The Sidelines.
Let's go!
On the Sidelines is available wherever you get your podcast.